Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be speaking about the logistics behind bundling a product, or some people may be calling it kitting a product. So let's say that you want to source or create a chopping board and knife set. So the manufacturer that creates the chopping boards is not going to be the same manufacturer that does the knife sets. They have different materials, they are totally different products, and you will most probably need to be working with at least 2 different suppliers. If also you're getting your own custom packaging, you're most probably also going to need a packaging supplier. So who receives the products? Who bundles the products together? Where do you do the inspection? How do you get the products from one supplier to the next? That's what we're going to be speaking about in this video. I have a little slideshow for you guys to show you exactly what it is that I'm referring to. Before we get started, if you're new here, my name is Sharon Evan. I am an Amazon seller. I'm also a product developer. I help people to develop their products, and I also help them to launch those products on Amazon. I also do one-on-one coaching, and if you're interested in that, I'm going to put my website down below so you can have a look at the different offers that I have. And also, if you have not yet subscribe to the channel, please do. It really helps me to grow the channel. It also really helps me when you comment, so please do comment down below and make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so the concept of bundling. Let's just talk about the stages in general when we're sourcing a product. There's many different stages. I've put in the main things that you need to think about when you're bundling. So the first one is the RFQ and the sampling. So obviously you're going to find potential suppliers to work with. Then you're going to be sending them an RFQ, so request for quote form. Once you work with them on different types of quotes, you're then going to get samples, okay? After that, we have the purchase order. So once you've received the samples, you then either approve it or get further samples, whatever it may be. From then, you're then going to put in a purchase order. Then we also have the commercial invoice, because that's part of the question. Who do I get the invoice from? Then we also have the inspections, okay? That's part of questions I always get regarding bundling. And then we have the bundling itself, so who actually accepts the stock and puts it into the packaging. And then, of course, we have the shipping. So that's the bird's eye view of it. Now let's talk about the different ways that we can approach it. So the first way is that you can hire a sourcing agent. Now, even when we're speaking about a sourcing agent, there's also different types of sourcing agents. There's a type of sourcing agents in which they take care of the entire process for you. There's a type of sourcing agents where they only get quotes and then you need to take care of the rest. Currently, the type of sourcing agent that I'm speaking about is the one that takes care of the entire process for you. So what that means is you would create a specification sheet. You would send that specification sheet to your supplier. On that specification sheet is what the final product needs to look like. So let's just say in this case, for the entire conversation, we're going to be using an example of you are sourcing a chopping board and knives, and you're going to be having that put into beautiful packaging, and so the final product is a chopping board and knife set. Okay, but obviously the people that make the chopping board don't make the knives, and then you've also got the packaging. So there's 3 different suppliers in that process. So you've got 3 different suppliers, but on top of that, you've got a sourcing agent who takes care of everything for you, right? So what that means is you would create a specification sheet, which on that has the final product. So what you expect it to look like, the chopping board with the knives in packaging, and then your specifications for each product separately. So if you have specific specifications for the chopping board, specific specifications for the knife, and then your customized design for the packaging, you send that to the supplier, to the sourcing agent. The sourcing agent will then go and source basically different suppliers for you. Sometimes they give you 3 or 4 different suppliers with quotes. Sometimes they only give you 1. It depends on what type of sourcing agent you're working with. Now, there's also different types of sourcing agents on how much you know. There's the types of sourcing agents where they don't tell you the names of the suppliers, and there's the type of sourcing agents that do. There isn't a right or wrong process. I'm just explaining the different concepts of that. This isn't like a sourcing video or podcast, so it's very focused on the bundling process. So in that scenario, you have one specification sheet that you send to one sourcing agent. You have the supplier then sources them for you. They send you the samples all together to you. You have one purchase order that you put in for the supplier. You have one invoice for the sourcing agent. You have one invoice that you put in for the sourcing agent. You have one inspection done on the final product together, because the sourcing agent takes care of the bundling and the kitting process for you. Whether that will be in their own warehouse or whether they have arranged in a different process, it doesn't matter. To you, you have a sourcing agent who takes care of the entire process for you, and therefore the inspection can be done on the final product. Now, so you've got that done, and then they bundle it for you, and then you go ahead and arrange the shipping. Okay, so that is how it would be done with the sourcing agent. Pretty easy process. And very straightforward. Sometimes it's the smarter way to source when it comes to bundling, because it ends up being headache-free almost. Not headache-free, there's always headaches in sourcing, but the least amount of headaches. And sometimes it can also be the cheaper way to do things, and sometimes not. It really depends, and you're going to have to figure that out by getting different types of quotations. So the second possible way that you could do it. So in this scenario, again, we're talking about a chopping board and knife set, which would consist of 3 different suppliers. It could also consist only of 2 different suppliers. So let's just call the chopping board company, let's call them Supplier A. The knife company, we're going to call them Supplier B. Now, sometimes you may also have Supplier C, which is for the packaging, or sometimes, let's just say Supplier A can also source the packaging for you as well. So that's also an option. So sometimes in this case, you could be dealing with 3 different suppliers, or you could be working with only 2 different suppliers. So in this case, we're going to say that Supplier B and C send the products to Supplier A, and then Supplier A bundleizes it. So again, Supplier B is the knife company, Supplier C is the packaging company. So sometimes, depending on the type of product, depending on your relationship with the suppliers, with the manufacturers, sometimes you'll say, look, Supplier A, we're actually kitting this product together with another product. Would you be willing to accept, the knives that come in and the packaging that comes in and kit it all together for us? And more often than not, depending, again, if you're creating a gift box that consists of, let's just say, 7 different products inside of it, then, the supplier for one of the products will most probably say no, because there's a lot that goes on there. In this scenario, we're talking just about a chopping board and a knife sets, and they're going to accept that in. It's not as complicated, and Supplier A could say yes. They may say yes, no problem, and then they would charge you a fee, which could be 30 cents, it could be 40 cents, it could be 50 cents, for the fact that they're accepting in the stock and then bundling that together for you. And sometimes that's the best route to go. So in this case, we'll start with Supplier B, which is the knife company. So you would have obviously sourced that company on your own. You would have found them on your own. You would have had a sample sent to you. You would have put in a purchase order with them. You would have had an invoice from them, and you would have had an inspection done with them separately. With Supplier C, which is the packaging company, same thing. You would have sourced them yourself, or they may not be a packaging company, and Supplier A or B could have taken care of that. We're going to pretend as if there is a packaging company. Again, you would have sourced them yourself. You would have received a customized sample to from them. You would have had a purchase order done with them, and you would have had an invoice from them. Okay, then they both send the final product, or and the packaging would probably be sent flat, then to Supplier A, which is why you want to take into consideration the cost from Supplier B and C sending the products to Supplier A. There's a tracking involved there, and therefore it's ideal that they are all in the same area. Okay. Anyway, they would then send the product, put it into cartons, send it over to Supplier A. So obviously you would have sourced Supplier A yourself. You would have had sampling from them, purchase order from them, an invoice from them. And then obviously they then accept the other stock into their factory, and then they bundleize it for you. And then there is the question of inspections. So this is very dependent on the product. So I'll give you an example. We have bundleized a product before, which I can't say what it is, but one of the components was actually a component which, so it was a few different products, but one of the products consisted of, to create this one product, it consisted of 2 different suppliers. And then Supplier B accepts component 1 from Supplier A, and then they put the product together and it becomes a product. Okay. For the Supplier B, which was a type of metal product, we did not get an inspection done with them. We had a final inspection done when the product was put together. Now, there is risk involved in that, because once the product's put together, and that's it, you paid for the purchase order you've paid for the invoice to that supplier, you no longer have leverage. If there was a problem, the product's already left, you've already paid them. But it was such a non-complicated product that was a decision that we made. We still had an inspection, but the inspection was done on the final product itself rather than each one separately. Now, in this specific scenario, remember the reason that I always have an inspection done in this scenario, let's just say the knife set, that is something that you need to have an inspection on. Now, remember that you're having an inspection done, and then you're asking them to then ship the product to Supplier A, which means that you're paying them. Okay, so you would have paid them, and because the reason I'm bringing this up is because someone may say, well, I'm not going to have 3 different inspections or 2 different inspections. I just want one, which means that you would have a final inspection done only once the chopping board company has accepted the stock in from the kniving company. But what if there's a problem with the knives, right? And you've only had the inspection done with the chopping board company who's bundleized everything. You've already paid the knife company, okay? And therefore, it's very product dependent. 90% of the time, you should have an inspection done for each product separately. Sometimes it could be such a simple product, I don't know, like a pen or a pencil or something, very, very, or an insert card or something like that, where you decide that you don't need an inspection there. You'll just have an inspection on the final product. So the Supplier A accepted the stuff in from Supplier B and C. They bundleized it for you. And then they have arranged the final shipping cartons for you. They've given you a final packing list, or you may make that packing list. Most probably you would make the packing list, I should say. And then you arrange the shipping yourself. You could, have one of the suppliers, you could have Supplier A arrange the shipping. I've never done that. I never use my suppliers for shipping. I never intend to. I work with Unicargo, which I've been working with for about 5 or 6 years. They're my freight forwarders. I would then send them the packing list, and then they're going to come back and ask me for a commercial invoice. I would then send them 3 different commercial invoices because I've got 3 different suppliers. Okay. Now, there are different ways to work around that, which I don't want to get too much into right now, but that is how that would work. Another option is that sometimes let's just say you've got 3 different suppliers here. Again, the chopping board company, the knife company, and the packaging company, and none of them agree to bundleize it for you, or you don't want them to know about the final bundle. That's also something that sometimes could happen. At the end of the day, we are talking about China, and sometimes people are scared. So you may then decide to have supplier A, B, and C send the product to a 3PL in the country that you're sourcing from. In this case, we're going to talk about China, and that 3PL company, so the warehouse, will accept each product in separately, so from 3 different suppliers, and then they will kit everything for you. They'll bundleize it, and they will then put it into its final master cartons, and you arrange the shipping from there. So in this case, each supplier you would have sourced yourself. You would have had samples, you would have put in a purchase order, you would have had an inspection done separately, and then you would have had a final invoice as well. They would have sent the products to the warehouse or the 3PL. The 3PL company then puts everything together for you. Now, you've already had an inspection done for the chopping boards and for the knives, and now that's it. You've paid them. It's no longer their responsibility. Now that has been sent to a 3PL. The 3PL workers are then kitting the product for you. One of them, I don't know, could drop the product and damage it, okay, and then decide to put it back in. The question is, you then have another inspection done. Personally, I've not had another inspection done in this scenario. I have used warehouses or 3PLs in China to kit products for me. I've not had another inspection done. I'll usually have some video footage and photos sent to me so that I can understand that they've packaged it correctly, etc. And then I'll have that sent straight to Amazon from them. I've not had an issue with this before. I can foresee that you could have an issue, and you may decide to have another inspection done. Inspections usually cost around $250 per man day, so it depends on how many units you're having checked. They can usually check, it depends on the type of product, right? There's certain products where they can check 200 units in one day, and there's certain types of products where they can only check 80 units in one day. So it depends. So that's another way that you could kit products together, which is each supplier sends it to a 3PL. Again, you've sourced each supplier yourself. You've had samples from each supplier yourself. You've had a purchase order from each supplier. You've had an inspection. So you may notice I didn't get an inspection done in the packaging company. It's very rare that I'll have an inspection done in a packaging company. Usually if it's a normal paper type box, even if when it's been a more rigid, more expensive box, I've not had an inspection done with the packaging company. Never had an issue either. So anyway, we've done that, and we've got 3 different invoices, okay? And then we've kitted the product, and then we ask the shipping company, we send a final packing list in which we create. We send that to for a quote from our freight forwarder, and the freight forwarder will ask you for an invoice. You'll send them 3 different invoices, and then they'll come and pick it up and send the product. And then there is one last example. So let's say you have 2 suppliers from China and 1 supplier from India. What do you do? Now, in this scenario, I am using the scenario where the chopping board is sourced from India. The knives and the packaging are sourced from China. So what do? Do you send the product coming from India into China and then have it bundleized there and then send it to the US? The answer here is a bit complicated because, again, it depends. I can tell you that I've actually done this exact scenario where a chopping board was actually sourced from Thailand. The knives were sourced from China. The knives were sent to Thailand. The client bundleized the stuff himself in his house and then sent it as a final product to America. It was small quantities at a time, and the knife that he had sourced from China, he didn't need to pay any import fees on it in Thailand, and then it made sense. So it depends whether you're going to be needing to pay any fees. Most of the so there's different scenarios, there's different examples here. Example one is that you have obviously sourced each supplier yourself. You've got a purchase order, inspection, invoice, everything done from each supplier itself. Each supplier then also puts everything into final cartons for you. Now, because it's not the final bundle, then they may be able to fit way more units into a carton as well. And then they are each sending a product to a 3PL or to you if you have your own warehouse, or to your home if you want to kit yourself. You accept, or your 3PL accepts the products in the country that you're sending it to. We're going to use USA as an example, and then in the USA they prepare the final 3 products together, and then they send it into Amazon. In this scenario, since the knives and the packaging is being sourced from China, I would get my freight forwarder to pick up both of them and send them, in the same container or ship or together. It depends on how you're shipping it. And then the product coming from India would obviously be sent as well. Now, sometimes this is actually a cheaper way to do things. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. Depends on whether you need a 3PL in America or not. Because shipping goes by volume weight. So once you put these 3 products together, it could be that there's a lot more volume. Obviously, you can fit less units into a carton, and therefore you need more cartons. And whereas when you ship each of these products separately, you can stack them, for example, on top of each other, and you can obviously have less cartons, and then shipping can be significantly less when each product is sent separately. So the packaging, would also be sent flat, and then the company or you or whoever ends up receiving this to bundleize it, they would get them, prepare the box, etc. Manpower in America is expensive, and therefore it may not make sense to do this in this way. But a lot of people sometimes initially may have the product sent to themselves or to their own warehouse, and then kitting the product together isn't that expensive for them, and it makes more sense to do it. What do you do when kitting the product in the final destination country that you're going to sell in, for example, America? It's just way too expensive. Then obviously in that case, you would most probably have the Indian supplier send the stock to the Chinese suppliers, or you'd have the Indian supplier send to China, and then a Chinese 3PL could kit the product for you. It's really dependent on your needs, because it could be that the most important thing for you is cost. And then you need to compare the two. Well, how much is it going to cost me to have the Indian supplier send it to China? Who's going to accept it in China? Who's then going to bundleize it, etc.? That may be cheaper. Sometimes, though, there could be some sort of fee, some sort of import taxes, etc., that you'll need to pay on that. The fact that that's come into China, and then you need to pay more import fees when the products are coming into the US, and then it doesn't make sense. So everything is product dependent. I've given you multiple scenarios here that you can use for the bundling. A question that someone may have is regarding for example, the barcode that's put on the packaging, who does that? So I always have the barcode put into the actual design of the packaging, so that I don't need anyone to be placing stickers. If I did need someone to be placing a sticker because I didn't have a barcode on the packaging, whoever is doing the bundleizing for me is the person that would be putting the stickers on as well. And that's it. I hope this helps to show you that Bundleizing is not as complicated. Maybe it sounded a little bit, but it's really not as complicated as it sounds. It's very easy once you've gotten the process. Once you've got a process in place, it just works. And a lot of the times when you're bundleizing, it's a great differentiation point for the final product. Most of the time when I'm bundleizing, this is the route that I choose to go down, which is using my sourcing agent. I've got a few different sourcing agents, which are great sourcing agents, which I've been working with for years, and they take the headache away for me. This, I'll say, is 90% of the time what I do, because it's usually also cost efficient for me. So that's there's that. Sometimes if it's not obviously cost efficient, then I'll do it, one of the other ways that I've showed. Okay, I hope this helped you guys, and I will see you all next time.